call the meeting to order. It is 5:30. Declaration of quorum. 7 members are present. Item C1. We're going to go
Board of Trustees picture. So the Board of Trustees are going to excuse themselves to the back where we have the photo shoot set up. We'll be gone for a couple minutes. If anybody in the audience, since this is an open meeting, would like to watch the picture, you're more than welcome to come with us. So they'll be gone in just a few minutes. All right. Chuck will tell you where to go.
Totally expected Mr. Head.
You're going to need it here. Yeah.
Excuse me. You didn't break it?
Camera still works.
He doesn't know that.
I'm a professional.
We will move on to item D2, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to CSISD board operating procedures. Dr. Ely.
Mr. President, members of the board, as per our board operating procedures, we go and review those after an election, and we have changes in the composition of the board. I know that in working through the induction process with our three newest board trustees members, we talked a little bit about this at a couple of instances before their service on the board began. But since it is in our board operating procedures to review this, we have this here tonight to go through it, and I will go through it rather rapidly since we the most recent review for the entire board to make changes is actually in August of this year. So just 4 months ago, you'll recall we had to make some changes on that due to some changes in state law regarding the opportunities to address board members during public meetings. So as we're moving on, look page 2. We have our board ethics statements, and so those have not changed. That is a part of our board policy as our ethics statement, those things that you agree to. Moving on to board authority on page 4. And the role of the board, it states that the role of the board and board officers, that no board member or officer has the authority outside of a board meeting. No board member can direct employees in regards to the performance of their duties. What do the different offices do? The board president presides at all board meetings, appoints committees, calls special meetings, signs all legal documents as required by law. The vice president acts in the capacity of the president in the absence of the president. Secretary shall keep accurate records of all board meetings, call meetings, and act in the capacity of the president in the absence of both the president and the vice president, and he or she shall countersign all warrants. Role of the board in executive session, reminder that we can only discuss those items listed on the executive session agenda, and that is limited by the law. And we can only vote in public sessions, and discussions during executive sessions must remain confidential. Moving on to communication. Page 6, we've had the opportunity already to do a little individual board member requests for information, but just a reminder that board members request the information through the board president to the superintendent. And so what we have asked in the past is if you have a request for information, that you send an email directly to the board president and the superintendent at the same time. Copy us both on that. The superintendent will gather the information and a report and disseminate it in a timely manner to the entire board. Board members are encouraged to advise the superintendent of questions or concerns on the agenda items before the board meeting so that we could have the most accurate information possible for you to be able to make an informed decision should you need to make one that night. Citizen request or complaint to individual board member. When somebody comes up to you with constituent services and has a request or complaint, please hear the citizen's problems for full understanding. If this constituent requests assistance in addressing the problem, evaluate the validity of the situation. And if the request appears to be valid and is urgent, or it's complicated or has the potential for major consequence, board members shall refer the request to the superintendent or designee for administrative action. If the request is not urgent, board members will clearly explain the constituent, the district's chain of command, and then direct the constituent back to the system to talk to the teacher, principal, transportation office, and the like. So you're talking to somebody, you hear about it, it's something that could be really big, it's urgent, it's a major issue, then let the superintendent or designee know immediately. And I would say the superintendent so we can get the proper designee, should we need to do that. If it's something that is not of that type of level of concern, then please direct them to the right part on the chain of command. The board member may need to provide the constituent with contact information. The constituent shall be invited to contact the board member again if a timely response is not received from the staff. Employee is very similar to a complaint or request to an individual board member. Board member will hear employee's problem for full understanding. They'll repeat the problem back to the employee. They will explain the chain of command and remind the employee of the due process in the chain of command. And the board member is encouraged to notify the superintendent as quickly as possible. So I'm going to stop here just real quick. Any questions or comments that we have on constituent services or complaints or requests for information to either a member of the community or an employee? Hearing none, I'm going to move on.
Actually, Clark, I do have one, and it doesn't deal with complaints or requests necessarily, but like I received a email at my CSISD email address from a student inquiring about school. I think he was doing a report about school district policies when it comes to vaping. How can I respond to that? Should I respond to that?
So was it for a report? Did he want your opinion on it?
It was it was basically kind of what are the, he referenced doing it for a report for school.
So in that type of situation, I would refer him back to staff so we could get him the actual information, accurate information of where it's located.
Okay.
So that is a constituent who's requesting information.
Okay.
Just happened to be a student.
Good deal. Thank you.
You bet. Any others? Okay. Moving on to board member visit to school or campus activity. You are encouraged to attend special events on campuses. If you do go onto campus, please do not go into teachers' classrooms or go on campuses for the purpose of evaluation or investigation. You'd leave that up to administration should the need arise. If you do go when you're not attending a scheduled activity, you must notify the principal prior to coming so that they're aware that you're there. Okay. Communications, superintendent will meet with the board president on a routine basis. Superintendent will communicate with all board members via regular transmittals, as you know, they come out on Fridays. Superintendent will communicate information in a timely fashion to all board members, and any requests the superintendent from any board member will be distributed. The answer will be distributed to all the board members. Okay, moving on to page 7. Media inquiries to the board. The board president shall be the official spokesperson for the board, for the media, the press on issues of media attention. All board members who receive calls from the media should direct them to the board president or designee. Individual board members can answer media questions related to their personal stance on pending issues. However, the president is the only one who speaks for the entire board. Okay. Constituent phone calls, letters, and electronic communication with the board. This is one we tweaked a little bit last time we were together. Confidentiality will be maintained to the extent permitted by state and federal law. The CSISD Board of Trustees encourages input. However, anonymous calls, letters, or electronic communication will not receive board attention, discussion, or response, and will not result in directives to the administration. And so, obviously, that's something that we've had in place for a number of years. Constituent conduct during board meetings, participation is allowed. A person may address the board on an agenda item or a non-agenda item by completing a note card next to the sign-in outside in the foyer. Agenda comments will be heard at the time the item appears on the agenda. Non-agenda items comments will be heard at the beginning of the meeting. The board shall not engage in dialogue with persons during the board meeting on non-agenda items in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. Just a reminder, if somebody comes and talks to us about an item that has not been duly posted for 72 hours, we cannot discuss it per the Open Meetings Act. If it is an agenda-related item, we'll hear that at the time when the agenda item comes up, and then there can be an opportunity for answers to be given or questions that we could ask the speaker for clarification and things like that, because it has been posted. Should a non-agenda item come up, the board president may direct the superintendent to investigate issues raised by the speakers and report back to the board through transmittal or a designated meeting. It doesn't have to, but the board president may direct the superintendent to do that. Just a reminder, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Those citizens who require the use of an interpreter will be allowed double that time or 6 minutes. Each speaker is limited to 1 opportunity at the microphone, regardless of minutes used, and those unused minutes may not be accrued by other speakers. Okay, so for non-agenda items, no more than 5 persons may speak about the same position on the subject. The first 5 persons who submit a note card will be recognized to speak. Again, that's non-agenda items. Just for agenda items, based on the change in state law that took effect in September 1st, as many people who want to address the board on an agenda item may be allowed to do that. Okay. The board president shall recognize persons who sign up to speak in the order the cards are submitted to the board executive assistant or clerk. A person addressing the board shall stand at the microphone and state his or her name and address before beginning the comment. Signing cards shall request speakers to be respectful in their comments. The board asks that those addressing the board refrain from derogatory comments. No signs or placards shall be brought in the boardroom. The audience shall refrain from talking or applause during the comments. Okay, that's a lot right there. Pause. Anything that anybody wants to address, question, change, talk about. Those have been pretty much our standard protocol that we've done for years, maybe even decades. We have made a couple changes to reflect changes in state law. Okay.
But just one quick one, and I feel like every year this comes up. Right in the middle, it says for non-agenda items, no more than 5 persons may speak about the same position on a subject. It's not subject. If something, and again, we've never had this that I'm aware of. But if there was something controversial and we had, it was kind of we've got 5 people
who are for it?
Yes, and 5 who are against it.
Correct.
We can have 10 speak.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Yes, sir. That's what that means.
Just making sure.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Okay. Going on to page 8, the president shall read the introductory remarks before public comments are listed on the agenda. I won't read that to you because he reads that in every meeting. Participation in public hearings is the same as the section above with the following changes. During the public hearings, the board is assembled only to gather information. The introductory remarks reflect a change in the setting from a meeting to a hearing, and the difference in time. It would be 4 minutes at a hearing rather than 3 minutes like we have at a regular meeting. Board members shall not answer questions or enter into dialogue except with their attorney in the case of an employee hearing. Each speaker is limited to 4 minutes, as we said earlier. No limit is made on how many persons may speak on the issue or position, and the board may elect to receive electronic or written input relating to the issue being discussed in addition to the public hearing. All right, going on to board meetings, page 10. Agenda development shall be as follows. The tentative agenda is created by the administration and presented to the executive committee the week prior to the meeting. The board encourages the superintendent to include at least one report on student achievement or closely related item to student achievement at regular board meetings. And as you know, we have regular board updates, and we'll be having one tonight on instructional coaching. We have those 6 of the 12 months. We have them 3 in the fall and 3 in the spring. A board member shall submit agenda items to the president at least 8 days prior to the meeting, and items so submitted shall be placed on the agenda. So I'm going to stop here. So right now, any board member, any individual board member can request something to be on the agenda by requesting that of the board president. Now, not every board does that. Some require 2 board members to agree to have that on there, or the board president and the person requesting it to agree on that. We have a pretty wide open approach. I'll just throw it open to you. Does that still meet our needs in the school district, or would you guys want to talk about maybe a different process for putting items on the agenda?
I think it serves us well. I don't know that we've had any bogging down with agenda items. Just my thoughts.
I mean, the reason you change things is when they start being abused, right? And to my knowledge, it's not been abused. So.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm not asking for them, just wanted to.
I'm just curious. I mean, obviously being a new board member, but at least 8 days. I mean, where's that? Why? Why 8 days? Why not 7? Why not 5?
So we meet to set the agenda usually the Wednesday before the Tuesday meeting. So that's 6 days before. And sometimes that gets moved up to the Tuesday before. Sometimes it gets moved to the Thursday before, just based on people's schedules. You got to get a bunch of people to get there. So it gives the board president enough time to think about it and bring it to the meeting. And so that's basically the Monday before the Tuesday meeting the next week. I think is why it's in there. I don't know if there's anything magic about that. Yeah. If we're good with that, I'm going to keep going on then. A draft agenda is sent to the board members electronically at least a day before the official agenda is posted, 72 hours prior to the meeting. Now, these board meetings are usually on Tuesdays, which means we have to post them by Saturday. We post them almost always by Friday, and we usually give you a preview of the board agenda without the links on the Thursday before. So we're usually more than way ahead of the curve on that. At least 72 hours advance of each meeting, the board members will receive information for all agenda items, including title, purpose, background, relevant state statutes as needed, related district policy, and proposed cost. All of that is in the board agenda memos that you received that are linked. In fact, you and the public receive it at the same time. Okay. Moving on, College Station ISD will meet in a regular monthly business session on the 3rd Tuesday of each month in the CSISD boardroom. Still like 3rd Tuesdays? Actually, when I started here 20 years ago, for the first few years, it was 3rd Mondays, but we moved it. So Tuesdays work? 3rd one of the month? All right, excellent. Keep going. Additional meetings may be called as needed. You've already seen that. Emergency meetings may be called in accordance with requirements set forth in the Texas Education Code. Normal agenda for the work session shall be public workshop session, which we're in right now. And then public board meeting, and you see all the information that we have on there that we do every month. I'm gonna go to page 11 on consent agenda. Just a reminder for anybody who's watching, consent agenda items are generally routine, and trustees have knowledge of their content and how they affect the district. Examples could include renewal of Region 6 and TEA items, budget amendments, financial information, meeting minutes, board policy updates, personnel items, and bid recommendations, those things that are routine business. During or before a meeting, any board member can request that a consent agenda item be brought to the board for discussion, questions, and consideration. So as we go to that, we always ask, does anybody wish to have a consent agenda item pulled? Very rarely we do. We do ask you that you let us know that ahead of time so we can make sure we have that information that you may need to discuss. And so we do superintendent reports, items for consideration, executive session, and then adjournments. So moving on to page 12. Board meeting procedures, just a reminder, 4 board members constitutes a quorum. We use parliamentary procedures as outlined in Robert's Rules of Order. All discussion shall be directed solely to the business currently under deliberation. President shall keep the discussion to the motion at hand and shall halt discussion that does not apply to the business before the board. As far as voting goes, the president may vote on all action items and can make or second motions. Sometimes that's not allowed. In the case of a tie vote, the item is postponed. The president shall bring the item back to the board on a subsequent agenda. When only 4 board members attend a meeting, a unanimous vote of those 4 members is required to pass motions. Okay. Board president has the right to recognize board members prior to giving their comments. In executive session, closed session items can be declared in advance and listed on the agenda, or a board member can, during a meeting, request a closed session on an agenda item that qualifies. So you can't just request to go into closed meeting to talk about student performance data. But if you wanted to talk about an employment action, then you could. So any of those things, a safety action, those things that are expressly listed in Texas Government Code Chapter 551 that allows us to go into executive session, we can go into if we need to. That make sense? You can only discuss those items on the agenda in the closed session, and you must vote in public sessions, and we must remain confidential. We talked about that earlier. Electronic devices shall be turned off or silenced. A board member with emergency needs from outside for outside contact during a meeting will notify board members in advance. And so that does happen from time to time. And if you do, please let the board president know if you've got an emergency need. Board members shall dress and act professionally. And we all do a very great job of that. You all look smashing for your board picture today, by the way. Going on to page 14. Evaluation of the board annually at the workshop, retreat training. The board superintendent team evaluates their effectiveness, reviews operating procedures, and conducts new board member orientation. So we do new board member orientation as we go on, actually a little earlier, and we're reviewing operating procedures now. The evaluation of the board and superintendent is an indication of the success of the governance team and meeting established goals. Where the board reviews and revises annually core beliefs and commitments. So we need to bring those to you. The district's vision statement, belief statement, priorities, and goals are disseminated to employees and the public via the district's website, at events and printed materials in other ways. Criteria and process for selecting board officers. We just went through this last month. Candidates for the president of the board, vice president, secretary must have at least 1 year's experience on the board. Officer elections are held following the November general election of each year. And sometimes, depending upon how the calendar falls, sometimes board members are sworn in at the November meeting, and sometimes it's December. This year it was November, so that's why we had the officer selection in November. I believe last year it was December. If board officers are not available to conduct officer elections, the superintendent shall assume that role. Okay. Any questions on board operating procedures? Okay. Thank you very much for that. That's item D2. Mrs. Perry.
We will move to item D3, consideration and discussion related to TASB Update 114.
Thank you, Mr. President. TASB Update 114, you'll recall that last month we sat in here and went over some of the things that are on TASB Update to make note of. Since that time, the administration has met once for several hours to review some of those things and what we'll need to do in response to those. All we have this on right now is there any questions that you have before we go to the meeting at 7 o'clock? Because at 7 o'clock, that is a consent item for the approval of Update 114. So is there any questions or comments that you have for either one of us? Hearing none, great hustle, Mrs. Perry. Thank you for coming up. It's great seeing you.
I'm hearing there's no PowerPoint slides tonight. I'm kind of disappointed. Item D4, consideration and discussion related to opening participation for non-resident students for certain career tech programs only at College View High School.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This is something we've talked about for the last few months, and that would be how do we provide opportunities for students who don't reside in College Station ISD to take part in a really great program that's not offered in this region, and it's the Fire Science Academy that's housed at College View High School. We've looked at a couple options, entering into memoranda of understanding with various local districts, or making some changes to limited open enrollment. With more information on that and kind of our next steps is our Deputy Superintendent and Chief Financial Officer, Mike Martindale. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Dr. Ely. The handout that each of you received, it is the same handout we looked at last month. Since we kind of had a transition, thought I'd just take a moment to take a look at these in case there are any additional questions from the board, and then talk about our possible next steps, if there are any associated with this particular item. Again, I'm just going to go step by step. Program capacity. If we're looking at a 2-year program for the Fire Science Academy, College View High School beginning next year, we would have capacity for 36 students, 18 per level. There are 4 students currently in that program, so actually we would have 32 seats once we transitioned. So there is a limited capacity as to how many kiddos we could offer this to. And as we look and consider this, and I know this is assumed and understood, we would only consider allowing or opening this or whatever, MOU, whatever, if we do anything, allowing students from outside College Station ISD access only after all of our students here in the district went through the registration process. So this would be any available seats after that registration process. From an attendance standpoint, limited open enrollment, those students would actually become students in CSISD at College View High School for the entirety of the day. They become our actual students. Through a memorandum of understanding, they would remain students at the district they're coming from, come and attend this particular class or academy at College View High School for 85 minutes every day. This would be every day of the week. Now, since Mr. Grimes and that group are on a block schedule, their classes are 85 minutes in length. At a traditional high school, our 2 comprehensive high schools, they are on 7 8-period days. And so those class periods are closer to like 48, 50 minutes. So what a student coming from a traditional high school in another district would be looking at committing 2 periods from their day at their traditional comprehensive high school, and probably a third as well due to travel time. So they'd be committing 3 periods a day from their traditional comprehensive high school if they're just coming over to attend at our school through a memorandum of understanding. Okay, is everyone with me? I don't know if I explained. Okay, from a funding standpoint, if they become one of our students, we collect funding as we will with any particular student. It's weighted because it's a CTE program. Not going to get a lot into that. If we go a memorandum of understanding, we would need to develop some type of fee or pay structure associated or tuition that we would charge the district from which they are attending. And we have yet to apply any real numbers to that at this point in time. But we would need to establish that, make that a part of our MOU, if ultimately that's where this went. Transportation, we would not be responsible for transportation under either approach. Under limited open enrollment, those students would be responsible for getting themselves to College View High School on a daily basis. If it's under MOU, the sending district would provide that transportation to the students to and from College View High School as needed. Scheduling is similar to the attendance that I just spoke on. Again, scheduling 85 minutes every day. If they're here under limited open enrollment, they're our students. That's just a part of their regular schedule as any student would have at College View High School. So Mr. Grimes would handle that through the scheduling process as they would for any students at College View High School. There'd just be a particular course that they selected through their scheduling process. They're coming from another school district through a memorandum of understanding. Again, they would be giving up a minimum of 2, possibly 3 periods. They are going to have, it's going to be difficult for those kiddos, in my opinion, to get their schedule worked out appropriately where they're giving up 3 periods a day and still getting all the other requirements they need for graduation through an MOU approach. Policy implications, we would need to look at policy FDA local and see what kind of wording would be required to allow the non-resident students to attend specifically for a fire science program at College View High School. Otherwise, with an MOU, we just craft that understanding, and we would have an MOU for every district that might be interested. So that's a lot real quick, so I'm going to pause in case there are any particular questions. This is what we discussed last month as well. I remember Mr. Nugent had a particular question last time about would students in district be able to come over for the program and then return to their comprehensive high school, for example. And the answer to that is no. If they want to be a part of the fire science program, they will become a student at College View High School. And I just remember that one from last month. Looking at the side-by-side, if the board so wishes, the next step would be possibly for me to ask, I believe the limited open enrollment is the most viable if we were truly going to provide options for other kids to become a part of this program. The MOU provides too many obstacles with their scheduling and travel. I don't see how a kiddo from another district could sacrifice 3 credit periods a day to acquire 2 in fire science. It would not work for them from a scheduling standpoint. If we're to proceed forward in considering this, my suggestion would be I could get some draft policy from TASB for us to look at next month, see how that reads, the FDA local, because that's what we would have to address to open up and allow students to come participate in this program and enroll specifically in College View High School for this program. So I could craft TASB some draft language. We can look at it next month and kind of put our eyes on that and start having conversation along those lines if we want to continue it as a consideration.
So as Mr. Martindale was talking about that, I saw some nods, but I guess it's the time to ask, does anybody have any heartburn about this or want to really talk more about the memorandum of understanding option?
Are there any negatives or drawbacks to going to the limited open enrollment?
From College Station ISD's point of view, we don't see any. One of the reasons would be because there's a finite number of seats that we're talking about. I think perhaps leadership at neighboring districts might be worried that we were trying to open up our enrollment and gather more students from their district in order to get the average daily attendance or the funding that goes with that. That's not our intent, and I don't think that would be what would actually happen based on the numbers that we're seeing. There perhaps could be folks within the school district who might struggle with the school district using CSISD taxpayer resources to educate students who don't reside in CSISD. Again, it's not that many students. We already do that for children of employees who work full-time or more than 30 hours a week. So I don't anticipate that being a major drawback, but those are the couple things that could possibly be negatives about limited open enrollment. But since it is on such a reduced scale, it is only at College View High School, and it's only for the Fire Science Academy that has a finite number of seats, I think it would be met with favor in the community.
One follow-up question to that. And so Mr. Grimes and the Fire Science Academy folks are on board with doing this?
He's here? Yeah, yes, he is. And he's been along with us with his conversations every step of the way.
And I just keep asking myself, what would be best for the students? Which option would be best for the students? And it sounds like you've also thought about this. You said that it would be better for their scheduling, for them to do the limited open enrollment. So, if that's what you really think would be best for the students that want to participate, I say let's look into it, into the wording.
And Mr. Ben, I echo what Dr. Ely said earlier. If there's a increased interest within, there's quite possible there were very few numbers from outside, if any. So there is a as he said, a finite number of seats offered. So this is going to be a very controlled situation.
It's offering the same choice to some students from outside the district that we offer to in-district students. If you go to college, you remember you're making a commitment to go there because you're not playing in the orchestra or marching in the band or playing football. You go to school there the full day, and it's a different educational program there. And we'd be asking those students from outside the district to do the same thing. They can't come over here and then leave and go to one of our other comprehensive high schools to be involved in programs either. They're going to College View just in the same way kids who were zoned to Consol or College Station High School would be.
Well, and so I guess that's kind of where I'm at on this is that, obviously we're serving CSISD. So the limited open enrollment is very attractive. I think it's one of those, it's just another tool in our tool belt to offer to our students for those interested in that. So I like that, but I think it kind of sparks the interest, no pun intended, but of outside the district. And it really, who knows what can happen aside from the funding side of it. Yeah, we can look at the numbers and all that and what other districts might think and this and that. But if, like Geraldine was saying, if we're looking at the students side of it, starting limited open enrollment could open a network, if you will, down the road, and we'll just have to cross that bridge. If I'm understanding how we're looking to set it up.
It is not the administration's intent to have this to be the first domino to more limited open enrollment for College View or for other programs. We're not opening for second graders to be able to come in the district. So that is our intent. When we came to you with this idea about making some different opportunities available for students in this very limited way in this region, that was what our intent to do. That was where our intent was in bringing this to you. And so the words that we would put in the policy language, should we bring that to you next month, would be very limiting. It would be limited to that school and that program. And that's policy language. And it would take other board policy action to expand that. And that would not be our recommendation at this time.
Are there other districts that are doing something similar to this? I can't remember if we discussed that last time with the limited open enrollment option.
Oh, that do limited open enrollment? There are people who do that all over the state.
So for specific programs?
Yes,
Okay.
there are. And I thought you meant fire science programs, but okay, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, just any kind of specific program similar to what we're trying to do.
And that's one of the things what we do when we work with our policy consultant
Right.
at TASB is we ask them to go and look at other exemplars from other districts so they can pull language from that. And that's exactly what they do for us.
The memorandum of understanding scares me a little bit, I'll be honest. I'm much more comfortable with a limited open enrollment for various reasons that we've kind of discussed. I think it does, because if you think about it, we're talking about this was brought to us for serving children in this region, not serving children within CSISD. So when I think about what's best for CSISD, it feels like the MOU is a little muddier and doesn't feel as clean, and also could eliminate children who want to come over eating up that class period time. So would that even be attractive to be able to do that, and would that entice anyone to come over? So,
Mrs. Green, that's one of the things we don't know. And
Right.
if we, whichever way we go, if we choose to go either one of these directions, if we go one, we're going to see what impact it has and what interest there really is in some of our surrounding districts.
And this is local policy. So for example, have TASB draft up something for us to look at next month. We look at it, review it. If we don't like the way it feels, we can have additional draft or not. And it's local policy. So if we get to a place and we're comfortable and we move forward with it, and then we get to this time next year and we're sitting here and going, uh-oh, I thought that was a brilliant idea, but maybe it wasn't. It's local policy. Then we make the appropriate adjustment to local policy, or the board has that authority to do so. We manage this how we see fit to benefit our district and other kids that are interested. So it is we do have much more control if we manage this through our local policy writing and adoption.
Okay.
Just adding, I'm fine with proceeding as well. I mean, again, it sounds like there's a need out there. I mean, that's why this started, a need for the greater community, but also I think it would benefit our CSISD students to fill these classes a little bit more. I mean, I think we recognize that. So I'm willing to keep proceeding as well.
Okay. All right, anything else?
My reservation about the MOU is, I think if they go to Bryan ISD where the travel time is closer, but when you start looking at some of the outlying districts, I think the thing that I am concerned with is the student and his travel time, his or her travel time. I mean, that's going to be a lot of time. And probably the last thing is a culture. I mean, we have such a good culture at College View, and I think if somebody goes there to get the full effect, I think they would have to be full-time students there, in my opinion.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'll get some draft policy for us to take a look at in January, and we'll kind of go from there. Yes?
Okay.
Right, thank you.
I know that you will not be busy after Thursday at noon, right?
That's right.
3
You'll
o'clock.
have plenty of time to
I'm
work on
gonna
that.
work on it
He'll
all
be here all the way to 3.
Absolutely.
That brings us to item D5, consideration and discussion related to upcoming board training opportunities. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer, members of the board. This is just an opportunity for us to talk about some board training opportunities and Team of 8 and other things that are ahead of us. So I'll just start with Schlechte Center training that's coming up on January the 3rd and 4th. Just a reminder, we're all scheduled to be there in Austin the night of Tuesday, the night of the 2nd. And then it starts on Friday the 3rd at like 7:30 a.m. We'll go all day and stay that night, and then it goes to noon on Saturday. Earlier, I guess about 3 weeks or so ago, Mr. Schaefer and I talked about at that time extending that opportunity to Mr. Martindale to come and be with us at that as deputy superintendent in his role there. So we went after that meeting that he and I had, we went ahead and registered Mr. Martindale for that as well. So right now we have registered 7 board members, superintendent, and a deputy superintendent. With my impending change that will be happening after the first of the year and would be actually the next week after the Schlechte. Just kind of want to throw it open to the board. Is this something that we still want to do? And I hope that it is. And if I'm happy to go with you if you want me to, or I'm happy to stay home and have the 7 of you and 7 of you, Mr. Martindale, go. So those are kind of some of the options that are there. Just want to throw that out. Or if there's any other board training that we want to consider upcoming Team of 8 or otherwise. So with that, Mr. Schaefer, I'll throw it back to you.
Thoughts, concerns, comments? When this originally started, I thought it would be a good idea for Mr. Martindale When we do that just as a deputy superintendent, I thought that would be some good team of 9 training, just to get a different
8.5.
perspective. Or 8.5.
Sorry, 9.
I was wondering who the half was. Short timer.
Me, yeah, that's okay. Good point. Excellent point.
Sorry.
Put him on the board.
Got it.
It's on the board.
So I am happy to go with you and attend. I am happy to not attend. It is at the pleasure of the board. If you guys want to let me know later, that's great too. So I guess what I want to know and what Carrie needs to know is that the board members of 7 y'all are still fully committed to going on the 3rd and 4th.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Ely, what are your thoughts as far as whether it be just as beneficial, more beneficial, less beneficial for you to go or not go, or?
I think it'd be, I'm happy to go should the board want me to be there. One of the great things about the Schlechte Center and being there for a year and a half, a day and a half, is to think about the upcoming year and some of the initiatives and kind of the direction of the district. And if I'm going to be hired in another school district that next week and I won't be a part of that future and that direction of the district, I'm happy to not be there. If you think it would be wise for me to be there and to help with conversations, talk about the past and how that led up to that, I'm happy to do so as well. So how about that for equivocation?
I think I'd like for you to still be there, just for what you just said, for maybe helping move the conversations every now and then, and for, the past. And you've done Schlechte before as well, so you kind of know how Schlechte goes. What do the rest of you think?
I think just for the fact that he's thinking about leaving us, it would be good punishment for him to spend a couple days with us on the weekend.
I'm fine with it. Maybe we just don't give the option. And he has to be there, so I'm okay with that too.
Or he could be terminated, I guess, at that point.
It's not going how you thought it was.
That's why we have a discussion. That's why we have it in open meetings.
My first reaction would also be that you would be there, help guiding us through, our next steps, or you'd be a part of that guidance. And I don't think if I'm right, it's not completely uncommon that team of 8 would include other
It is
folks
not.
on your
No.
team, right?
No,
Yeah.
and some of the other districts will have larger administrative staffs there with them. Yes, ma'am.
I think you would be an asset to have there with us, so. In
So I
addition
think-
to whatever
I concur.
punishment he's.
I think it would be the desire of the board that you attend with us.
Okay. All right. I serve at the pleasure of the board, so I'm happy to be there with y'all. Okay. We do have other training opportunities on there. Is there anything else anybody would like to talk about any further training? Just a reminder, especially for you new members of the board, you have a lot of training that will be coming up that you'll have to have by November, or really by the October board meeting of 2020. And a large majority of that you can get at the Texas Association of School Administrators, Texas Association of School Board Training, which this year is going to be in early October. Reminder, you have to get 10 days, I'm doing this again, 10 hours of Tier 3 training. So that is a lot. We will be able to, if all 7 of y'all will be there and the superintendent who is here at that time, that would be me, we will be able to get our board team of 8 training accomplished. You would probably want to do some additional team of 8 training when you have a new superintendent leader of the district after that time though as well. So is there anything else anybody else wants to discuss about training opportunities, or wait until we have new leadership in place?
Just, where is it's early October. Where is it this year?
I'd have to have somebody look it up. I think it's Dallas. It'll be Dallas or Austin.
Okay.
It is Dallas.
And I was just one thought, maybe back to Schlechte, if there's anything else we need to do to prepare for that, or you'll let us know if there.
If there's any pre-reading that we get, we will certainly get that out to you in advance. But Carrie, we have not received anything from them on that, have we? So,
Okay.
I think we definitely would want to do some more team of 8 training when we have
New leadership.
different leadership.
Okay. Anything else? I will start.
If there's
back in
no
the back.
further items, we will adjourn. It is 6:20 PM.
All right, back at 7.